The 2018 NBA playoffs are just 2 days away, and I have my playoff predictions right here. Now, before I start, guys, remember to slap that like button if you like the video. Comment down below, tell me what your NBA predictions are, and click subscribe if you haven't already. Let's start in the Eastern Conference, Toronto and Washington. Now, I think Toronto needs to make a statement in this series. I think Washington is the best first round playoff opponent Toronto could have asked for. Washington's got a good team. They've made the playoffs without John Wall. But I think Toronto is a deeper team. And you could give the edge to Washington when shooting the 3-ball because Toronto's very streaky in that area. But I think overall, Toronto should handle Washington quickly in 5 games. And that would give them some rest between the first and second round of the playoffs, which they're going to need because historically Toronto doesn't do anything easily. So this series has potential to go 7, but I think it'll be over in 5 in favor of Toronto, considering they have home court advantage. Now moving on to Boston and Milwaukee. This is a tougher series for me to pick a winner because Boston is without their 2 best players, in my opinion. Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward. And don't get me wrong, Boston still has a very good team, even without those 2 guys. But let's remember the last year, Milwaukee in the playoffs. I mean, they gave Toronto fits for 6 games. I think this series goes 7. And I'm feeling a bit of an upset in this series. I think if Giannis Antetokounmpo can get back to the form of last year's playoffs, him along with a bunch of others on that team can possibly upset Boston. Now, if Boston was healthy, I would say Boston in about 4 or 5 because I think they'd be able to do that. But without Kyrie and without Gordon Hayward, I think it's going to be really tough on Boston's young stars. I mean, they still have Jason Tatum, Terry Rozier, Al Horford, but I think Milwaukee matches up good against those players. And so I'm saying Milwaukee in 7. Now, moving on to Philadelphia and Miami. Miami, for a while there, they were out of the playoff picture, and I thought they were going to finish in the 8th seed and play Toronto. But, the seeding was so tight in the East this year that Miami wound up in 6th. Philadelphia's been on fire. But I think they're going up against a very solid veteran team in Miami. I think Philadelphia could finish off Miami in less than 7, but because of Miami's experience and because they have a guy by the name of Dwayne Wade and company, I think Philadelphia not having playoff experience over the course of a 7-game series is going to hurt. So the series goes 7. I'm taking Philly in 7. But it could easily go the other way. Miami's a very gritty team. They play everybody tough, and you can never count them out. So I think that series goes 7, and I'm giving Philadelphia the slight edge based on the way they've played recently. Now, Cleveland and Indiana. Indiana's had a great season so far. And they surprised a lot of people, I'm sure, including me, getting that 5th seed and playing consistently all year. But Cleveland, even though they've had a lot of bumps in the road this year, have been consistent themselves. And the trades they made at the trade deadline still make them a very good contender in the East. So I think Indiana's going to put up a bit of a fight here and take the series to 6 games. But Cleveland won't let it go to 7. And they'll finish off Indiana in 6. Now, second round. That means I have Toronto and Milwaukee, second round in the East. And it's going to be similar to last year. If Milwaukee makes it this far, I think Toronto will still finish them off in 6 games. And the other second round matchup would be Philadelphia and Cleveland, and I think Philadelphia will put up a fight if they get past Miami. They'll put up a fight against Cleveland. They match up quite well against them. But Cleveland has this guy by the name of LeBron James, and, come playoff time, flip the switch, and he just goes off. And I think as long as LeBron's in Cleveland, as long as LeBron is in the Eastern Conference, then the NBA Finals go through LeBron and the Cavs. So I'm saying Cleveland in 6 over Philly. That would mean the Eastern Conference Final is a rematch of the 2016 Eastern Conference Final. And you know what? Toronto has to play a lot better for what I'm about to say to happen. But I think this is Toronto's year. Third time is the charm, as it said. Toronto beats Cleveland in a very close 7-game series in 7 games. They have home court advantage. And I just think that, Cleveland's going to put up the fight of their lives, but Toronto, if they play like we've seen this season, and not like they played in the last 10 games because it wasn't that great, but if they play more like they did in February, March, or early March anyway, then they should be able to beat Cleveland. So I have Toronto going to their first NBA final. Now, in the West, first seed Houston facing 8th seed Minnesota. Now, Minnesota was a team that was hyped a lot, in my opinion, this season, and in my opinion, they did not meet expectations. I mean, they should be higher than the 8th seed, and yes, the seedings were close, but I really don't give them much of a chance against Houston. I mean, Houston was hyped a little bit, but they were mainly a bigger surprise. I think nobody expected them to have the lead on first that they did in the standings, and I don't give Minnesota much of a chance. Houston in 5. Golden State versus San Antonio. Same sort of thing as the Houston Minnesota series. San Antonio hasn't had a great season. Kawhi Leonard probably not going to be there next year. Didn't play for most of the season. Even without Steph, Golden State in 6. Moving on to Portland and New Orleans. New Orleans is another team that's surprising to me, that they're still in the 6th seed even without DeMarcus Cousins. Portland is another surprise. I mean, getting the 3rd seed, given the team that they've got, is a bit of a surprise as well. Portland's got the playoff experience. New Orleans is going to put up a fight in this series because they have Anthony Davis. Potential for this series to go 7. But I think Portland will finish it off in 6 games and move on to the second round. Last first round matchup in the West, OKC versus Utah. Utah's another surprise. Not that long ago they were on the fringe of making the playoffs and they wind up in the 5th seed. And only to run into a very good OKC team that I think is going to be on the warpath this year. Potential for them to go to the conference final. So I think they finish off Utah in 5 games, and I'm being generous there because I think OKC could easily sweep Utah. And then that means second round I have Houston versus OKC and Golden State versus Portland. Now let's start with Golden State versus Portland. It's to my understanding that Steph Curry could be back some point during the playoffs, possibly in the second round. Even if he doesn't come back, I think Golden State can finish off Portland in 6 games. I love Damian Lillard. I like Portland, but I think that Golden State is just too good, even without Steph. The other matchup is a little bit harder to pick a winner. Houston and OKC. I think the series goes 7. And I give Houston the slight edge. Just because they've been more consistent this year. And, they're the first seed for a reason. I think, with that being said, I think OKC is can't be counted out. Easily going to put up a fight. You can never count Russell Westbrook out, and now he has some help. So, I'm gonna say Houston in 7, but it's hard for me to say that. So, the Western Conference Final, I have Houston and Golden State, and I think this is another 7-game series. Again, I'm giving the slight edge to Houston because we don't know if Steph's coming back. Golden State hasn't played that well down the stretch. And, I think that, I don't know. I'm feeling Houston. I really am. I think this is James Harden's year. I really do. Sorry, Golden State. I mean, there's potential for Golden State to make it to the finals, absolutely. That's why I have the series going 7. And like I say, it's hard to pick a winner, but I like Houston. So that means the NBA Finals would be Houston and Toronto. Now, I know it's a long shot to predict Toronto getting this far. I know that, guys. But I think there's potential for it to happen. And if they do, they beat Houston this year. They won the season series. Now, Houston wasn't on fire during that first game, but they were during the second, and Toronto beat them. Toronto was playing their best basketball at that time. And, so I have this series going 7 games again. And I'm picking Houston. I think Toronto's got a good team. I think they'll make it to the finals. I think it's a long shot for them to win. I think it's even a long shot for them to get by Cleveland. And if they do get by Cleveland, it's only going to be by the skin of their teeth. So I'm picking Houston. I think Houston has a little bit easier road to the finals because of the way they play, because of how consistent they are. So I think Houston will pick up their 3rd NBA championship in franchise history. And Toronto, a career year for Toronto. Best record in franchise history. First Eastern Conference championship. And if all goes well, and my predictions are at least somewhat right, first NBA Finals appearance. So that's my prediction, guys. Hope you've stuck with me this long. And I'll see you in the next video.